Focus it directly on the, you could even middle of the street.
Yeah, if we just do straight
Right. Just one person. Yeah.
Here we go.
Great.
Very good.
Yeah. All right, Rob. Anyone?
You're the chairman.
I just did that.
Yeah, so 2-item agenda tonight. Actually, I have one thing to add at the end of this, but it'll be very quick. But at the last meeting, we discussed the ADU regulations and state mandate. And what we discussed was if we look at our current regulations, we don't have any zoning that allows an accessory dwelling unit unless it's a family apartment. So the thought was, since this section of our bylaws is going to be null and void pretty soon because of the state regulations, that this will go away and we can basically rework this to have the ADU regulations for the state. So we went over briefly the state, the draft regulations from the state. And what I did was I incorporated most of it, not all of it, into a draft document, which is in your packet. And let me pull it up. It's brief, just like the old section, but I'll kind of go give you some of the takeaways here, and we can edit it based on.
Rob, may I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
Did, since I didn't get emails, had you emailed the bylaws to everybody on the team? Because I see everyone has copies of them, I don't have them.
Okay.
So if you would send me.
Yeah, I'll get you up to speed. I can
Up to
see everything
that'd
today.
be great. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
That's okay.
I'm having a hard time seeing the screen at that. Well, I can see that now.
Okay. So the draft language is in there.
Thank you.
So basically what I've included, a big crux of the actual regulations are in the definitions, which I don't necessarily like, but that's how they were written with the state, the draft regulations of the state gave us. But in that definition for the accessory dwelling unit, that is where it describes separate entrance, the gross floor area where it can be half the gross floor area of the principal dwelling or 900 square feet, whichever is smaller. And 3 is just this is subject to restrictions as may be imposed by a municipality. That was straight out of the state language. Gross floor area, this also comes from the state draft language, which I know you have some questions about this because this definitely heavily relates with the building.
Yeah, they're going back and forth, a lot of meetings that we go to for this regulation, they're saying, are we talking about basement, the, any kind of breezeway, finished living area, and they're saying everything total, including a basement. They're not saying finished area, they're saying gross area. So, at the end of the day, it makes it a lot easier to make the threshold of 900 square feet for an additional unit, really. So,
yeah. And I will say, so there was an open public discussion portion of this that occurred where the state was actually taking any input from the public and talking to the different town planners. This actually was this morning, and just people acquaintances through the field. There is a lot of public comment that was submitted to the state because there were a lot of issues with those draft regulations. I know we went through a few of them last time. Basically, I think some of this is subject to change. One of the big ones was the which I don't think I put it. Yeah, I didn't even include it in the definitions. I'll show you where I did put it. But one of the definitions was for a single family residential zones, which essentially these regulations are stating that in any single family residential zone, you're allowed by right to have one of these accessory dwelling units. With the definition, they state that a single family residential zone includes a zone that allows single family residential dwellings by right, special permit, development plan approval, and then they also included variance, which doesn't make any sense because you could always apply for a use variance for any district. And so it doesn't make any sense. So what I did, well, I'll get to it after this, but it's in the next section where the zones that we should allow this, but the other items too, this is,
Can I interrupt you?
yeah,
Just before we move on. So for this definition of gross
gross floor area.
floor area, I have a question for Tim. You see this kind of expansive definition in other facets?
No, not really, no. This is a stroke on this one here. You know, I think they're gonna try tighten this up. I mean, public comment period is still open on this, I think.
I think
Did
it
it close?
just,
Did it just
I
close?
think it just ended last week.
Oh, it did? I thought.
It might still be
I
open,
thought
I'm
it was
pretty sure.
open. Yeah. So, and there was a lot, input, so, I think things are definitely gonna be rewritten. I can't see it going through the way it is. There was way too much question about, with a lot of groups. So yeah, that's pretty, wide open there.
Well, what is pipe trenches? What is that? A pipe trench counts towards your gross?
The what?
No, those are
That's
excluded.
excluding.
Oh. Measure.
So like, I think what they're saying is if you
Oh.
have a 600 square foot house, you can't count your pipe trench
Uh,
to get a higher
um,
square footage to get a larger EDU.
But they are going to the exterior of the wall face,
Gotcha.
Outside dimension.
isn't normally done.
Yeah, outside dimension because it's zoning. I mean, zoning is outside dimension as built and stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah, usually, like when you're doing the square footage of a building,
it's to the outside. They don't take the wall cavity as an exemption.
I have run into issues like in Boston when I've done work in the city and in Providence where the outside wall and interior wall gets confusing because the architects usually go by interior wall, engineers usually go by the outside wall. Architects usually win because they're smarter. I've learned. Right, so they say. Yes, they tell me. So,
One is trying to increase the rentable area,
yes,
is trying to decrease it.
yes.
You don't see too much, I haven't seen it zoning where it falls out for interior dimensions on anything.
Yeah, not
For
really,
zoning.
especially in Bellingham, it's not usually,
It could be out there.
yeah. I would picture it wouldn't be through your office, it would probably be through fire safety or something. But,
Well, this may be a silly question, but number 3, there, principal dwelling.
sure,
The definition of a dwelling is a structure.
yes, according to,
So my shed, if I was sleeping in my shed, it'd be considered a principal dwelling.
that,
Or if I had a barn, a big horse pond in my yard, say I had a small house, relatively small home. But I had a big barn or, in the back, because I had horses, just making something up here. Would that barn then become a principal dwelling and you can use that as the gross floor area? The horse is the owner. No, because
Yeah.
some, big sheds and big barns and people's yards in Bellingham.
yeah, and that should be the definition straight from the state regs, which, I'm gonna pull them up later, but I can see if there's something that I missed. Because I do recall there was something that it was a structure and then including a space for cooking, I think.
Yeah, it's.
Right, I would expect something like that.
Space.
It might have been included in another
Yeah.
definition that I did. Matter of fact, it might have been dwelling and principal dwelling. The language was pretty dicey the way it was written,
Mhm.
but that is a good point, though. I'm gonna put a star next to that one. And then protected use ADU was another key item that was defined in the state language, which I just added. And then 5 was short-term rental becomes, I think, I think it's in the town's best interest to restrict short-term rentals. Which basically the language states that we can do that. That's one of the.
You took out regulation for that.
I think it's in our local bylaws, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, but that like, the, what do you call it, the, rental, that.
They want,
What's that?
Lake Harbor.
Yeah, it was on Lake Hiawatha, but it's, Airbnb. Stuff. Yeah, he was trying to get, yeah. You already have range for it. Larry was trying to.
Well, he was trying to.
But we already had it, we already got enforcement.
So that's definitions, but for the development requirements, which is just the next and last section, one is where I basically just define the residential zoning districts in Bellingham, which we have 3. It's residential, suburban, and agricultural. We also have the B1, B2, and industrial zone, but that is not a residential zoning district. So I just stated plainly in here that basically there's 1 ADU allowed by right in addition to a principal dwelling structure in those zones. Now, one thing that I will state is that I think if there's anything you want added or amended in here, that's great, I can do that. And I think the next step would be to ultimately send it to town council for review. Because there's a couple items in here, which right now the regulations are getting, I think, revised again. So we might want to hold off anyway, but I do recommend getting input from town council sooner rather than later, and then maybe seeing it through them again when the new regulations are drafted. But one of the reasons why I mentioned that is because we discussed that there was something written in the draft language stating that a town could allow or must allow additional ADUs, more than 1 per principal dwelling unit by special permit, which I asked, well, we were on the call together when I asked Amy Plessel, our town, the attorney, do we need to do that, or is that up to us? And her response was, we're not sure yet because this is the draft. We're trying to get more input, but right now I recommend just sticking to 1 new principal dwelling unit.
So, in the use chart, so, we talk about, agricultural, suburban, residential, B1, B2, and industrial. Industrial is no residential. Now, we currently have, principal uses in B1 and B2 for residential, which would be the primary use of the property. They happen to be in the business zone, but their primary is residential. So I don't think we could restrict them adding a unit there. So I don't know how that would shake out with the AG's office if we did that.
Maybe we could add another bullet here stating that
something.
if a principal dwelling unit is located within these districts.
Maybe an asterisk.
Yeah.
On the B1, B2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that would
Because I
make
think we
sense.
would lose on that.
I agree.
Yeah, so,
They used to be existing non-conforming.
If it's not conforming, then.
And
It's restricted.
Well, that's where this,
so the B1, B2 came in after, so that was a conforming, so
It conformed
it
before.
did conform.
Now it's not.
But if the primary use is residential, this bylaw is saying single-family residential use is allowed to have a ADU.
one thing that
So I
they,
don't know. No, that's kind of. Town council probably weigh in.
On the principal dwelling definition, don't you have whether or not, regardless of whether it conforms the zone?
Yeah.
so,
Yeah,
yeah.
it would be allowed, they would be able to do it, that's my point.
Yeah, so they wouldn't be able to build single-family house in the industrial zone, like a new build, and then do the ADU. But if it's an existing house that's there, they couldn't do that. Um,
Can you back up to number 3, or paragraph 1, and is subject to restrictions as may be imposed by municipality? That sounds pretty broad. What does that mean?
let me see. Just have to read the beginning. I think what all that is saying is that to the ADUs, they're subject to our regulations. However, the state is kind of handcuffing us. So let me go back.
Okay.
So the crux of the regulations that the state has drafted is basically stating that we can impose the exact same regulations on an ADU that we do on a single family home. So if somebody comes in with a single family house lot, like they don't go through planning, for a development plan approval, they might go through conservation because that's
Sure.
in Title 5, but they don't necessarily have to go through a special permit.
It's just,
They don't go
it's
through.
just doing
They don't
regulations.
go through state.
So
So
more about Board of Health and storage, right?
exactly, really, it's.
Municipality piece there.
Yep, exactly. So I think that's where it's subject to restrictions. But they make it very clear that we, as the town, like we can't require them to submit like a landscape plan or
Right.
parking plans for.
Something that conflicts with that, rules.
Yeah,
Does that make sense to put that in? Things
so in the,
that you've got, I mean, thinking the bylaw would be looked at in the future. Does that need to be, those requirements are not in this or something?
well, I do, because the.
Would be different, right?
Correct. The two big items that, like, as far as what are their restrictions, so number 3 in that development requirements you can put that they are required to, require Board of Health approval to make sure that if they're gonna utilize an existing septic system, that it has to be in compliance with its 310 CMR 15, which is Title 5. And that's actually, this is interesting, and I'm interested to see if the state actually comes back and puts more regulations regarding ADUs for Title 5, because if anyone's familiar with Title 5, if you build an accessory dwelling unit and you connect to the existing septic system, you have a shared septic system, that system has to have adequate capacity for the number of bedrooms. However, if you were to build an ADU and have a separate septic system, which I think is what most people would do, because when you add a trench to a septic system, usually the septic system's been around for at least 10, 15 years. And at that point, it's like, well, might as well just replace it because it's going to cost an arm and a leg anyway. So if they do a second septic system, now you have 2 issues. You have nitrogen loading issues in the zone 2, which is like the aquifer protection area. The other thing too is that according to Title 5, you cannot build a septic system from a 1-bedroom house. That would be a 110 gallon per day system. You have to do a minimum of a 2-bedroom. So you're already, like with a 900 square foot ADU, you might have 2 bedrooms. It'll probably be a 1-bedroom studio, I would think. You know better than me. Can you do 2 bedrooms in a 900 square foot?
It says only 1 bedroom in the regulation, doesn't it?
So if that's the case, then you're gonna be required to over design the space system, which isn't bad, but I can just picture the state saying, oh, handcuffing these poor people.
Yeah, exactly. We're trying to see housing, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So, what's the threshold for the number of is it 5 that triggers the nitrogen loading over, or is it 6?
So No, so it's per acre, so the nitrogen sensitive areas are zone two interim wetland protection areas. And if you're building in a zone two, and you're putting in a septic system, you are only allowed to go 440 gallons per day per acre. So basically a 4-bedroom house on a 1 acre. Right. If you go with they have like alternate systems, fancy Presby systems, you can go up to 550 if that's the case, which is a 5-bedroom, but you know, that they cost a lot of money. So
So if they attempt to do, say it's less than an acre land.
Yeah.
And they want to increase the bedroom size to, say it kicks it to a 5 or a 6.
yeah,
You know, can they do offsite, like, credits?
you can do, you'd have to acquire land in that same zone and then you would put a deed restriction.
Just gets more complicated.
Yeah.
I think people are gonna be doing all that.
No, developers will do it because they can, a lot of times if there's another developer in town, they own a parcel that isn't really developable, they'll say, I'll pay you, here's a bunch of money, I'll do, if you allow me to put a deed restriction on this.
Relatives, if you live next to your relative, you know.
Yeah, that too. So it's complicated, you know.
Question, does this apply to?
Yeah,
Does this apply to new construction? Like you could build a home with an accessory dwelling unit?
absolutely,
Yeah,
So it's even right out of the gate.
yeah,
correct.
which would be a lot easier, you know, to do.
It would be, especially from like the septic standpoint. Yeah, and something else that I don't know. I don't know if you deal with it or if it's DPW, but
Wake ups.
not the curb cuts.
Yeah.
Jerry know the answer to that.
Yeah.
The sewer capacity,
It could, yeah,
I don't know,
it could add up.
I know with commercial. You're actually required to, you pay the connection fee and usually there's some type of surcharge or something that you might have to pay. But for residential, I know we're tapped in North Bellingham. I don't know what, like, if we start putting these online. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah,
So that might be,
just, there's so many things to
yeah,
think about. I think you're gonna see the majority of these units, they're gonna be within the home. You know, they're gonna be the finished basements, or, you know,
Something.
or an addition,
On your wall.
you know.
With 1 bedroom and a
Yeah.
bath and a kitchen.
Whatever. I think you're gonna see most of them connected.
I was looking at, modular, like,
Yeah.
you know, they have dollar time, like Amazon sells them.
I just went to look at one.
Have you seen them?
Yeah, well, no, I went to look at someone that got one in.
Oh, so they.
Yeah,
so
it
they
came
get
from
that.
China.
A modular.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a contained unit.
In-
And there was like a, you know, like the trailer park houses.
Yeah, like-
You know, they say single wide, double wide. Well, this thing folded out, you know, so it was like, I think it was probably like 16 or 18 feet after it folded out. And it was
Yeah.
38 feet.
Wow. You just put it on blocks, so they have to have a foundation.
No, you could put it on a bed of stone.
Yeah. And the height of these, you know, there's a height restriction on this thing.
Yeah.
Those modular houses that I've seen like on Amazon.
They stack trees. Yeah, I've seen them. Yeah.
You know, the way you can see in square feet, but it's.
Well, we have a height restriction in every zone.
and for development requirements, they just put the ADU should meet the setback and building height requirements for other uses as set forth in Article 7 intensity of use regulations. The reason for other uses, the residential, we have 2-family or other uses, which includes like single family and way above like townhouse, modular, whatever you call it. So that's the more constricting one. That's more for this type of use. But that way it is specifically stated that no interpretation, that's where you have to leave.
But going up as high as the house that's there. He
Yeah,
doesn't sound like a good idea, but
well, I mean,
It's still 900.
Yeah.
It's
So you ran out of
Right,
feet.
right.
But
Yeah, you could have a bedroom above and I
yeah,
guess a module, yeah, yeah.
I mean, the ones that got on Amazon are only three.
Yeah, so our building heights are 34 feet.
34
In most zones.
You beat me to it. At 35.
And there are 2 stories, right? It's,
No, 2.5. 2.5. You could have a colonial house with 2 stories and then you have a finished, attic, and then the rafters go down to the floor and then you just, there's no building code is 5 feet in from the eaves, and then you can have a finished basement, no third floor wall, so it's like 2.5 story. And you could do it within 35 feet.
And the other thing too, Phil, going back to that, the whole stipulation that the ADUs cannot be restricted more than single family dwellings. So that's why, we restrict our single family dwellings at 30 feet.
you can say,
Yeah,
because of the language.
we could, the question becomes, how will it hold up with the attorney general?
You don't, yeah, you have to do that.
Yeah. So.
So I'm picturing like a single family home with a, something higher next to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just looks,
It's just,
yeah. Yeah, that's what you're gonna get. You're gonna get these things in people's backyards that,
you want that, or do you see that it can't be smaller than, on the site?
you got, like he was saying, the AG is gonna, nitpick, he's gonna look at everybody's answer to this. And say, yes, no, no, yes, So you could.
Well, depending on
do
what you
anything,
want
you could try anything.
Right, I would say depending on. Choose, you could choose, there probably will be some situations where we want to just sort of test that a little bit. I'm not saying this is necessarily it, I mean, it is.
Yeah, so I think the only issue with that, trying to get out in front of it like he's doing is, the more they turn it down, you can't, you're not gonna have a regulation, and so many people are coming to the window. When can I do this? What can I do? I'm like, it's not approved, this is when it's supposed to come, I don't know if it's gonna.
Is contractors or are those?
Homeless contractors.
You see the buzz online, what's coming out.
It's creating another income for people, essentially, in most parts. Some are, like you just had one the other day, it was, for the son, he wants to move on to his property, I was in Grove Street. So you're gonna get a percentage of them, but the longer we don't have any kind of regulation, it's gonna be the Wild West, and it's just gonna go on what they're saying.
And the other thing too, though, because I know, the state likes to drop this absolute bombshell on us with saying that this is enacted in February 2nd of this year, which is, the worst time you can, it's before every spring town meeting for every town, which has been a huge gripe with everybody I've talked to from other towns. But I wonder if the ruling for the Milton MBTA situation, I think it's going to affect this, because I don't know if everyone's familiar with that ruling, but basically the attorney general, the courts found that the attorney general has the right to enforce the regulations. The issue is that the state did not adopt the regulations correctly. So right now there are no regulations to enforce. They have to go through the proper channels to adopt those. And these were done the same way as the MBTA regs, is like loose.
That's the other thing, they dump it on us at the same time as the MBTA, so we're trying to get that done, because there's a deadline on it, and now towns are all scrambling for this, scrambling for this one. So back to you.
Do we have a requirement for current regulations for family apartments to name the people living in the family apartment?
Yes,
Do we intend to do that with this as well?
It negates, you can't run anymore.
You can't do that,
And I think the thing is, you don't even have to occupy the primary dwelling either. You could rent that out in the ADU.
Yeah.
Is there no requirement to, I'm thinking of a scenario where there's a fire or an ambulance needs to go to the house, and that people need to be aware that there's another house.
It's like an A and a B,
So that's a big point right now, so fire services are pushing that right now.
Right.
What they're saying, they've come up with the last meeting, that I went to, they're talking about how are we getting our apparatus around this house if it's a detached unit? And how are we finding, so 911, what are they doing? 1A or 1B or rear, how are we naming this
Yeah.
stuff, you know, because to your point, it's gonna be a nightmare for them.
Is that something they're figuring out?
Well, they took it under public comment, and I don't know what they're gonna do about it. I'm not, we're waiting to see how they address all this stuff. There's a ton of stuff. You know, a lot of questions.
Yeah, behind the house, you can't get a structure to.
Yeah, we'll see what they say. They're so hot on creating housing. I mean, this was started with, the previous governor. He started it.
The MBTA.
This too,
Charlie Baker.
yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was.
I know the MBTA.
I heard ADU was more.
Yeah, I thought it was Baker. I thought he did both.
I think it might be more, yeah. Snowball. No, I mean, even the, well, when the MBTA discussion first occurred, with the Charlie Baker administration, I think that's where the, especially discussions of waivers and like, if you are a housing choice community, which like Bellingham was, we have a smooth production of housing in this community, was that, I mean, it seemed pretty apparent that there were waivers. Matt, you were on the select board when they wrote the, didn't they write a request to get the MBTA waived when this like first came about?
No, we didn't want it waived. We actually adhered to, I was on board. We basically ran with it right away.
Okay,
And responded. Dennis wanted to kind of let's do it, and we moved forward instead of asking for a waiver. Unless he asked for it, I'm not aware, but I don't know that there were conversations about it. He just wanted to get it done.
yeah.
Yeah, and we did.
This regulation doesn't stop with this. This goes into 48 too. Pre-existing non-conforming lots. You know, yeah, they're saying we're going to give you back the lines that were. You know, so if you have a house, right? If you have a house right now, and you want to use it, non-conforming lot. Say you have a 10,000 square foot lot, and you have a 5,000 square foot lot next to you. Well, by Mass General Law, these are supposed to combine. You know, they're supposed to get rid of the line. And a lot of towns did, and a lot of towns didn't. What the state's going even further saying, we're gonna let you reclaim that lot. You can put the line back and you can create that lot back and sell lot if it's 5,000 square feet. The gallery, I think it's 5.
It's 5.
Pre-existing is 5, but I think they're gonna let you capture.
It's definitely 5.
They're gonna let you put the line back in, and it's a buildable lot now, where it hasn't been because of the merger rule and, you know, when zoning first came in your towns.
Contiguous.
Yes, any contiguous lot in contiguous ownership was null and void, so the line went away. You know, so now they're gonna let you reclaim. So that's even more housing.
How does a 5,000 square foot lot even on Weather Street?
Yeah,
So
yeah, so they're small in Weathersfield, but
small.
no, actually, Weathersfield are, well, yeah, Weathersfield are 8,000.
8 to 10.
Yeah,
So
So you're talking like an 8
yeah, but they're all over the place. Like Milford has a ton of them. We have some down south.
you should see them play with the new development plan.
Yeah, but I mean, so you can do that when the community has water and sewer, you can do it easy. Well, you know, like when you skate, some lots you can't do, even though you have, even though you have a 3,000 square foot lot, but there's no water and sewer there. Like you gotta get separation,
Right.
you know, well, and a septic, very easy to do on 3,000 square foot lot. But the ones that have water, town water, it's easy.
That's why they have.
It's easy, yeah, you can do a septic on it. And 5,000 square foot lot.
You know, those units you were talking about, those over units, for lack of a better word. I mean, are those stackable?
Did you see stackable one? Were they stackable or did they just unfold? The one I saw was a single level
No.
and it folded out.
I'm just wondering if someone's eventually gonna go, like, here's one unit, here's another unit, here's another unit.
Oh, special permit, they say you can
15,000.
go for special permit. Doesn't mean that CDA can rent, he's got, I know.
Yeah.
Just deliver it on Amazon, it's a little, yeah, we see them have gravel put down.
I mean, that's what I think. Oh my God.
Can't be like all the interior fit outs and stuff.
Oh, was there a price
I
on it?
know a lot of them use a train, with something strange. They're basically,
Basically,
18-wheeler trailer that's been, the ones that have the, no one's nice with it, they stack
That staircase brings out
to the trailer grandma.
trailers, we were just in this conversation about other
Yeah,
parcels.
is a trailer,
Oh, like if
Have
you just
wheels?
roll up in a
Yeah,
trailer and
yeah,
call it an
that's-
ADU?
That's what, yeah.
That,
So let's exclude the trailer.
Wow.
Yeah, some trailer parks in our use category, we don't. We don't.
We call it a permanent use.
Use category. Yeah. no
Yeah.
wheels.
Depends on how you define
Put the
it.
wheels on.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Before they construction was, there was, it's like a,
it's a great, it's not specifically listed, I mean.
Garage.
No,
Bringing in- Calling it an ADU.
Is it registered vehicle?
I'm sure they do it all the time.
Yeah, like a Winnebago.
Hot tubs.
Does that qualify as CDU?
An accessory is a self-contained housing unit inclusive of sleeping, cooking, and sanitary.
So we gotta make sure it says it's
Does it still?
Is it?
a fixed.
it's a
Rob,
fixed one.
there's a lot of good ideas coming out here. What is our next step to put this into something that we want to submit? Because it seems like there might be discussion there as ideas we don't, ideas we do, because we don't want to burden the acceptance to the point where our whole program gets dismissed and we're stuck with nothing.
Correct. So what I think, there's some really good discussion that has been brought up, and I'm just jotting down a few notes. What I would recommend is I do some edits to this, include some of this additional language. Maybe we can come back and go through it again. And at that point, I would recommend we talk to town council, and then I would table it until the regulations finally get adopted.
So what do we think are the three most important points we've battered around? For me, it would be safety access for fire and more importantly, ambulance, getting a cardiac patient from the backyard around the house in a stretcher when the primary residence is locked up.
It's address numbering, I mean, we can even use that as,
Well, there's an address, if we have a file, there has to be a number, like on that home, so if it's a 34A, there's gotta be a 34B, but it'd be clearly marked from the street when you look at a map.
Is there, I know that there's fire code, is there specific, like NFPA has like specific uses?
see, for one and two family is the least regulated out of everything. Once you get to three, then it's regulated.
Yeah.
Three triggers sprinkler, three triggers all kinds of stuff in the vehicle.
Yeah,
But two, I can't even go, they can't, so, when I started here, we have, so PM has a lot of three-family houses. And they were never inspected, and you're supposed to do it. So I started doing one at a time, getting inside them all and inspecting them all, and they have to be done annually. Twos, nothing, they can't tell anybody to do anything with a two. No enforcement on that, only if they pull parts, I mean, I can't say, hey, you have a closed area, and you don't have smoke detectors, hard and right. Three family, you have to have enough because common areas, the three family has a stairway going around each apartment, it has to be hardwired, secret system. Twos, I can't regulate at all.
So are three families strictly required?
No, now they are, but the pre-existing ones are just.
Because all that fire came from the outside. So is that something like, if this is a modular type situation?
Yeah, so
then, would a smoke detector be required on that?
yes,
It would.
in living there, they can't circumvent any building code at all, or health code, or conservation code
and
in this.
to that point, so Steve, about safety. We can talk to Chief Miller to see if he can pull out some specific sections that could be enforceable for this, because similar to like just saying, hey, you have to meet the requirements of 310 CMR 15. it's a blanket regulation that will hinder a developer's ability to like really throw some ridiculous structure in and not meet 1005. I know Chief Miller in Hopkinton, he ended up getting pretty creative on some of the single family residential
The
developments.
big ones.
He
big
was
houses.
he was telling me that he he advocated and they actually passed it. There was a bylaw that if you had a single family house and had a driveway, it had to be 18 feet minimum. And it didn't have to be paved, but the shoulders had to be able to accommodate a fire truck. So, it's pretty smart in my opinion, but that there was some code that he was able to utilize to get that to go through. And I'm sure he'll be able to assist, and maybe he can come to the next meeting, I'm sure he wouldn't mind it.
I wonder if that was for a driveway that was so long. You know,
Yeah,
long
I'm
driveway.
sure.
So there are some holes, because you wouldn't wanna get, you know, if you had a regular driveway that was 40 or 50 feet. You wouldn't wanna pull a fire truck there anyway, cause it'd be too close to the house, but it probably must be a length of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes,
Well, you don't want it sinking in
Yeah.
the grass.
yeah.
But the
Yeah.
things that I would recommend, so we can add something in here about safety. I would like to do something to exclude trailers or motor homes. It's not specifically listed in what the Attorney General drafted, so I'm taking it as a gray area we can enforce. The other one too, so I put in here Title 5. I think it would also be good just to include a little blurb in here about making sure that if there's any required Concom approvals, or registration and local bylaws, that's another item.
One thing I want to add, just going back to the stack. So let's take, for example, Weathersfield here, where all those slab ranches, right?
Yep.
In that area, I certainly wouldn't want them to be able to put a up to 35 feet behind my building. So to me, the regulation is the second dwelling can't be higher than the primary dwelling. I don't know if we can get away with that, if that's too restrictive, but I'm driving down the road and all of a sudden you see this.
Tail wagging the dog.
Yeah, I'm like, wait a second, that's.
Weathersfield, yeah, I hear what
You
you're
know,
saying.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear
All
what you're
those
saying.
slabs.
Weathersfield can't even fit.
There's not enough room anyway, but
Yeah,
they- what if they have-
but if they did have. Yeah.
What if there was an area that did have it?
Yeah, I would support that. I think that's
What
reasonable.
about an architectural consistent with the plan?
Well, I'm a big fan of that.
We could do
And
that.
that's the whole driveway.
No.
I don't know. We can.
Trying to find those two styles.
Similar, yeah.
Might be hard to. How it's worth it, that one.
Well, I think they're all projections now. If it wasn't a farmhouse, you'd want to be concrete modern building if it came out of Moscow.
Yeah. Well, we need to. Well, I see. IT. An aluminum shed behind a wood house.
Yeah, I could see though that if I had a barn in the backyard and I wanted to insulate that and make it a dwelling,
That might, yeah.
and then like it doesn't look like my house, it's barn. But that, is, we have a committee to design it to meet it.
All these modular homes would be compared to the other one.
Yeah,
It's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Well, I can see a lot of people finishing our garage, I agree with you, and getting,
Yeah.
$2,000 a month in rent.
There's one right down the street from me right now. I mean, he put a 2-car garage in next door. He said it's a Cape, it's a nice home, maintains it. Then he put a 2-car garage. He's been using the garage. I know the guy, but now he's built above there and it appears like somebody might be living. And you can see the lights are on all the time. There's a stairway up the side. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm going, okay. I'm not saying he's breaking it up. But it's like.
Feels like it's going up on just a hundred. Yeah, it's that you don't.
Help yourself.
It's next to the rundown. It's a nice.
Just saying.
That's his office.
Yeah. It's a nice, I mean, it looks nice.
Keeps it nice and absolutely.
So can these things be used for commercial? They're not used for commercial. You can't run a business out of them.
No, well, actually.
No,
I'm
occupation. Home office, they have 2 home offices, one from myself.
Look for an accessory dwelling unit?
We're in the house, we basically took a bedroom.
No, I'm trying to.
Oh,
For a business?
Yeah,
Oh, so you can, well, certainly, if you're in B1 or B2, you can do it as with, you know, we do it
We have, this
with
is,
ZBA approval.
so
You're allowed.
accessory uses, that's the family apartments, but there's also this home occupations. I can't speak to it because I'd have to read it, but if somebody came in and said, I want a home occupation, I'm gonna put it in an ADU, I would say, no, you're going to follow this regulation.
so if I said I wanted to put a separate garage, like a, well, like, and move my home office into that ADU, I could do that and not live there. I could build a 2-car garage basically at the side and work above if I wanted to. If I've got the setbacks,
It's not be an ADU, 'cause you-
that's not,
Yeah.
not really.
yeah,
It's not, I'm not really living there.
right.
It's about living
Right.
there.
Yeah, but you don't want someone to build it and then put a salon in it or something like that.
Right, so
I know what you mean.
you can do that in B1 and B2. With your primary use as residential, you can do that with a special permit. They go to the ZBA all the time. Well, not all the time, but we have some downtown, you know?
Right, but that's against this is,
Yeah.
this is looking, those on opinions.
Unless if the regulation doesn't explicitly prohibit that, someone would probably try to come into.
And-
Well, oh, no.
Yeah.
People do all kinds of stuff.
That people that are gonna do an internal, like in the basement kind of thing, is probably gonna continue to not pull permits and just do it.
Yeah.
I have a feeling because most households are on septic, that's gonna limit what people can do in reality, and they don't know that. So, cause that's the thing, like, there's so few households in our town that are on town sewer and water and all of that. That maybe that, well, I don't know.
There's more on sewer than, there's more on sewerage than sewer.
Yeah, and
Right.
there's very, very little that are not on town.
So, either way, there's a lot of people still on septic.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think once, if you have to upgrade your, like, you can't just throw up something, you've gotta upgrade the septic. I don't think people are thinking that they're gonna need to upgrade their septic, with all that. Maybe we have a natural constraint in our town
Yeah,
that will limit what people can actually do.
the other issue,
Dollars for like a smaller septic system, is that like a
20 grand. Yeah.
A year and a half.
Well, the soils around like where I live, Maple Street, that's hard compact soil. Bring a lot of soil in there, dig it all up and you bring in sand, it's expensive. I had to replace one. I've been there 38 years and I've had to do it once.
So is it a constraint, I guess, what I was trying to get at, taller wise, the years worth of events?
And it's definitely a, factor for people that are on very enormous, so it's a big factor. That's not something.
You don't think, I still think a lot of people who end up doing this will still rent to friends and family. Because I don't think the average person understands how terrible it is to be a landlord, especially when you have, no, we,
True, yeah.
Missy's a landlord. And they've had like the terrible tenants all the time, and they live on the 2 floors above and they rent the one below, and it's just like horror story after horror story, and I'm like, never in my life would I wanna rent out an apartment attached to my house to a stranger. Cause the squatters' rights in this state are very tenant friendly. So again, I think people are gonna be, they're gonna be really exuberant to begin with, and then they're gonna realize how awful it is. And how many hurdles there are and how costly it is. And they'll be like, all right, maybe I'll rent to my cousin,
Oh, one of my parents.
yeah, or like, oh, a friend of my kid or someone I know, as opposed to
Yeah,
just
most of
random.
the people that are doing it, are asking if you wanna do it, they're just landlords. Like there's one guy in town that owns a bunch of units.
Oh,
And
yeah, I
he'll
guess.
buy a
if you-
house and.
Yeah, that I guess is,
Because he's gonna look at every single one of his properties now, to see what he can add to it.
yeah, I didn't
It's just
think
gonna
about
happen.
that part.
And they're next to everybody. This guy, he probably owns, Josh Harris,
Yeah, she was in Pine Grove.
Okay, he owns all of them. Lake Hiawatha, South Maple.
It's 15 or 20 at this point.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's like that would end up doing it, but
There's a bunch of people coming in asking about it like that. They're gonna buy a rundown house. And we're gonna get stuff, and we're gonna add a new unit. That's how they're gonna make them up, and they're gonna make some. Those are things. So people build townhouses.
Tram has been issued.
That's right. Here's the business part. They're creating a business unit in the units. So people that have a home business or occupation, they have to buy, the bank makes them get a business certificate, a legitimacy in the town that they're operating in. So I get them every day. Rob, you see them.
Yeah, there's been some very awkward conversations.
So I tell people they come in, and I've been doing this for years. What are you doing? Is it a home office only? Oh, yeah, it's just a home office. I mail stuff out. I'm like, okay, we put right on there, home office, I sign it, I make them initial it and sign it. And I tell them, I said, look, if I get complaints, I said, I'm gonna come back at you with this, then you're not gonna be able to do it. If people are coming to your house and the neighbors call and say, they're parking in the street, that, you're conducting business there, it's not allowed. This is allowed for home occupation in a residential district. And that's what we do. So we do keep it, to
Yeah, you do get the occasional person that'll come in. "Oh, what are you doing? Oh, it's an office. I'm a GC.
Yeah.
Oh, what do you have for equipment? It's like 6 trucks.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Here's a question. What about like Bellingham House of Pizza and the ice cream place?
Yeah,
Are they allowed to put ADUs on their property now?
Well,
no,
no,
'cause
because it's not,
a
the primary is not residential.
Doesn't say that.
Well, it's business. So what he's saying it says residential zone, they're in B1.
Okay.
I did put a star next to principal dwelling because it basically just says a structure, but I do think that it needs to be specifically a residential use. We most likely, we definitely have a definition in our regular zoning bylaws for principal dwelling unit. I think I'm just gonna mesh the two of them because the biggest thing for this definition is a structure regardless of whether it conforms to zoning. Because they're basically stating that if you have an existing single family house, it doesn't matter if it's an existing non-conforming use, an existing non-conforming intensity. If you can make an ADU work, then you're allowed to do it.
I think the two best things that we have for helping us curb this, if that's our goal, is the safety aspect.
Yep.
You can't have it, I can't imagine someone saying, oh no, let's reduce safety and getting away. And then the septic component, because there's so much of this town that is resource area.
Yeah.
That's gonna have to be very tightly monitored.
Yeah, on the zone 2 side of things, I agree.
I think the home occupation definition might have to be revised, right? Because it says 25% of habitable floor area of the residence, and then accessory structures. So do we have to tie these in, or is there other places in our zoning bylaws that need?
Yeah, I mean, I guess. I think what I would do, because initially, I think the home occupation was supposed to be specifically for a primary dwelling. Because this is exclusive of accessory structures. I think it would be, the simplest thing would be to state in here that accessory or home occupations are prohibited in an ADU would be
Fine.
yeah.
But, yeah, but to the extent there's any other things that we should go through and.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there will be some parts. This
The
section,
average size house in town. Because to hit the 900, you only need 1,800 feet of square footage. Right?
Correct.
Gross area, yeah.
yeah, I don't know that.
That would probably, how much is the majority of
That or 2,500.
Yeah, the ones that are gonna suffer are the Weathersfield ones that are all slabs,
Yeah.
because you can't take the basement, residence area, so those are probably about, yeah, they're probably about 1,200, so. So they can only do 600.
Yeah.
Do you recall the square footage of the units for the new Bungay Brook townhouses?
Yeah, they're, let's see, they're right around 2,000, just under.
Because those are, I would consider that kind of an average size for a house, because those are 2 beds, 2.5 baths, but they're very generously sized two rooms.
Yeah.
So,
I would say if you were gonna average it, it'd probably the average square footage of homes in town is more than, I would say about 1,500 square feet.
When you look at the area like behind the bus room, those things are 1,100, 900 to 1,100, they're really tiny.
You go in
Some of those are like, I'm telling you, some of them are about the size of this room with maybe a bedroom off to the back, 2 bedrooms off to the back.
And no
Really tiny.
basements.
No slabs.
Yep. So there's a lot of
Yeah,
houses.
have you ever
Again,
seen some of
Weathersfield,
them? I mean, they like the size of a shed, I mean, it's a big shed. They have years, but.
And those houses, they have, first 3 kids.
My aunt and uncle, when we first moved to Bellingham, they had 5 kids in one of those homes, that wander away.
I believe it's like.
Starting me, you're gonna get. Wow, she will use. 4 or 5, 6 people.
this is a question, because if you're going to talk to. Let's say you have, let's say.
Time's
you have-
up, but you have-
I know,
They are
Yeah, why don't you?
That's what you can't know there anymore. Yeah.
It's your. Why don't we,
Yeah,
talk in
I know.
collective?
We have, Phil just brought up, and I think was a very good question. And the question was, if you have a larger scale subdivision or residential development, what exactly hinders the ability of that homeowner to build an ADU? And I don't know if that was here.
Is a part of the permitting process upfront.
And that,
In to talk about ADUs, and does this counteract that?
so for like a regular subdivision, no, there's really nothing in place that stops them from doing this. And I think the attorney general can take offense.
Already, but if there was a new subdivision going in.
I think the attorney general would still say. Is it?
What are you, just saying like blow up a series, let's say this is fast forward, he hadn't really done anything. And I said, hey, we're gonna put a restriction, you can build these homes, but there'll be no ADUs, I don't think that would fly.
Yeah, it doesn't go to the AG,
It doesn't?
but it's probably challengeable.
Yeah.
That person, that one person in the subdivision, say you're doing that, like, say, Pine Grove, the little golf course there that used to be there. Really big homes, nice homes. He has a covenant there, no above ground pools, and I'm sure there's other things, but I don't enforce that. I'm not enforcing your covenants to your.
We have confidence in ID where I live, and you can't remove trees, you can't have fences.
Yeah.
Like, I've taken out 20
Yeah,
trees in a year.
A private developer's.
Leo had all that stuff in there.
Yeah, I think,
It's challengeable for him.
Yeah.
well,
To sue his neighbor.
the big question comes into if you have a condo association.
Yeah.
Because now,
There you go.
I mean,
Now
that,
you're organized.
well, that completely conflicts with the AG's regulations, because.
No, but a developer could offer that as a package, right? Is that what you were saying, Phil? Like, oh, you can buy
Somebody's trying
the
to.
single family with the ADU package and this is what it looks like.
Or somebody's trying to get real dense and, looking for approval. And the decision on the approval is, okay, you're so dense right now, we don't want additional density in there.
I don't think you can restrict it.
Boy, if I was making that, if I was the person making that application,
Yeah,
why would I even discuss ADU at that point?
you wouldn't.
I would just go for the approval and then I'll.
But does that mean
I mean, the question is, was there any latitude as far as, do you just think about stuff like that ahead of time on other things?
I think where it would most likely come into play would be the design aspect, because like right now, when you do a definitive subdivision, the way that the stormwater design works is like, for example, like Eastland's development, they came in with the stormwater design with just a generic square box of what they assumed would be
A build
a build area, and that's how they calculated like their runoff calcs. I guess it gets more confusing when you start doing part roof area and more pavement and that's.
Eastland's Harmony?
Yes,
Yeah.
If you look at, our friend down by, Cross Street and, what's his name?
Who goes?
Lou?
Alfred? Lou?
No, Lou.
Oh, Lou.
If we look at him,
Mhm.
like he can build certain density or a certain number of units based on bedrooms, right? Or
Yeah.
so then he could also then, or later on, add in, and if the septic and everything is designed, you automatically have to consider a 900 square foot accessory dwelling unit in your calculations.
I don't know how that would work though, because it's all, the density is based on the bedroom count. Presuming. So, and technically, if we say no, you're not allowed to because it's additional bedrooms. Well, that's not going above and beyond what we allow for a principal dwelling unit. That's the count. So I don't see why we would be challenged if, well, we would be challenged, but I don't see why we would lose if we stated that, listen, our regulations for townhouses and that, and the way that this application came in front of us is based on bedroom count, bedrooms, what is allowed. No, can't.
Yeah, but that's enough.
And that's also a townhouse project, so I think that would also fall under the condo situation. It's not going to be
Single family.
like single family lots. So it's a good question though. I mean, this is where,
But if everybody has this automatic ability to build in another something, I guess everybody has it at least.
I think most of these things are gonna be in the basements of houses.
and I think
You
it's,
know?
I think you
Least
are,
challenges.
I think you are going to run into issues if you're not on like a single family lot. If that makes sense. Like if you live at, Maple Brook condos or now the Bungay Brook condos, like you're gonna have issues trying to get, because you don't actually own any of the land. So, but it's a good question. This is where, I mean, this is just a state mandated regulation that is just causing people who deal with this on a regular basis to scratch their
I
head.
think it's tough to come up with, I mean, we can come up with a few good points, but I think it's gonna be tough to come up with anything until we see how it shakes out. Which will be pretty soon.
But this was extremely good conversation, and I have quite a few things that I want to add to this and bring back. Safety aspect is definitely a big one. So why don't I do a little bit of homework? Maybe we can table this discussion.
So along with what Steve's saying about safety, what about it like, emergency exterior lighting? I don't think exterior lighting, so if you're gonna go to the, like, for example, if the unit's behind the house, this is the primary house in front of me, and they built something, now there's an apartment. There's gotta be some like night exterior lighting requirements for safety. I mean, I'm just thinking along those lines too.
The number has to be visible. The number has to be visible, that's fine, it's a
The
direction.
number's gonna be visible in front of the primary dwelling A, B, six, and there's gotta be exterior safety lighting available for emergency personnel. I'm just thinking that,
Parks gotta comply.
Just imagine.
Yeah.
If they don't, it's still bring ourselves at risk.
Right.
Right.
Detached aspect of this regulation is just gonna be absolutely. And not only for the planning of it, it's the enforcement after. Because you know what's gonna happen? The neighbor's gonna be calling constantly, he's shining his light in my spot, the dog is barking, they have a dog.
Right.
It's just only the same like there.
Yeah, this is gonna be an absolute nightmare.
Is there a building, what other nightmares do you see? What do you see ahead?
So that's what I see. I see lighting, I see dark sky compliant, right?
Yeah.
They're gonna have the lights, they're gonna be automatic, they're gonna go flash when a wild animal comes on. They're gonna have dogs barking, disturbance. They're gonna have parties. It's gonna be a police issue. I mean, I can see this happening.
Oh, yeah.
I can see the emergency, the visibility of the, identifying the numbers of these things, if it on a detached unit, even a in basement one, now you have another dwelling that you're gonna rent. You're gonna have to have clearly on the house that's legible.
Right.
Numbers.
Yeah.
And all that's gonna be, that's actually a big issue.
Yeah.
So, that's the other thing. So, we have illegal apartments in different places. People rent their basements. Just went by one the other day. They had 3 trash barrels heaving with trash. I'm like, I went, right when I got back to the town hall, I looked up at the assessor to see how many, I asked her, get me the plates for how many different names are living in that house. Because we're getting ripped off.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're paying for all this trash by the ton. And they've got 2 families living in there, it just doesn't end,
Well, there's definitely one in the corner of Stonehouse. We've been cleaning up that house, Neil's original house. There's a bunch of them living there, but they have like extra trash barrels. I mean, they're not like 2 rounds and 2.
We haven't even wanted to discuss this, actually.
But
At a meeting, trash.
Is that- Yeah, there is.
You're paying it, and the rates keep.
No, we do. There is. You can get a separate recycling barrel for no charge.
Yeah.
If you want a separate recycling barrel, you have to pay for that. We do. And then you also get your Bellingham bags too.
As long as they pay.
I have two, I easily go through 2 full recycling barrels every 2 weeks. Easily.
There's a separate ADU, meaning a separate trash. station.
Absolutely, yeah.
Does that go into?
That's part of the bylaws, and
I didn't go into
you have to make sure it's covered up though, and spelled out clearly.
Yep.
That's a good point. This is fun, we can put the.
Fair enough.
We need to ask.
What
him
other
if there
choices
is
and
not-
spots?
Also, detached ones, you're gonna need another, right? So they have sight lines, I mean, I don't.
Well, unfortunately too, I mean, even if you have like a square or a rectangular driveway that you can fit 4 cars, 2 side by side and then 2 behind that. If you own 2 vehicles in a principal dwelling and you're gonna be blocking either your tenant or your tenant blocks you, where's that car gonna go?
Yeah.
On the street, and they do meet the requirement.
Parking ban in the winter only.
Yeah, it's so.
Yeah, so, I wonder, they have to meet the use regulation for setbacks on a detached, so you have to be 10 feet from the sides, and depending on where it is, it could be 15 from the sides and the rear. Milford has a bylaw, I wonder if we, put a driveway bylaw in, Milford, the driveway has to be 10 feet of the lot line too. Bellingham has a 0 lot line.
Yeah, I
We don't
mean-
have a regulation, I wonder if that's may curb the access of the.
We don't have any regulations.
No, no, for driveway, no, yeah.
My yard parking, and stuff. You do. One bit of it.
Yeah, Milford, you can't put a driveway within 10 feet of the lot.
It's simple.
It's
a lot,
Yeah, we don't have one.
Driveways.
But the DPW for the driveway, in addition to, you can't just do.
All right, anything more to discuss?
I was curious if you wanted to ask town council about those people who already have permits. What happens to them?
Meaning like current permits for.
Accessories.
Yeah.
Oh,
The
yeah.
family.
All the regulation goes away.
Yeah, pretty much they don't have to renew the.
Do we need to inform them? your permit is null and void?
We have a record of all of them. I mean, we do have them all recorded now. We could do that because you know what? They have
Send
to
a
record it.
certified
They
letter.
have to record it every 5 years.
They have to come back. and
Yeah,
stuff. It's a
yeah.
ZBA.
You should notify them, you know, if it comes through.
You can walk by and shake your fist at.
You win.
One last question. When I read it the first time, there's, right now we have a requirement to know who's living by name. And this new ADU regulation does not, it's a stop on that.
Yep, correct.
And we challenge that, I think that is immensely risky. You can have all
Well, I
kinds.
think you have to know who's living in the primary.
No, you don't need to.
Cause I mean, I fill out the town census, but I know a lot of people don't fill out.
We're gonna know it with auto, exodus tax, and they register to vote. So
Mail,
You are gonna know,
USPS.
you are gonna know, but it's not gonna be.
If they use the ADU as a permanent address, like,
Yeah.
you know, box or something.
So, yeah.
The homeowner is gonna pay the taxes.
That's exactly it, so.
There'll be condoizing these things and everything.
Yeah, why would you want the name? Because the purpose for having the name currently with the family appointment is to make sure that it's a family member, that they're not just having it as.
Mine was to, would want these to become safe havens criminals that are hiding away.
Any house can do that now.
Yeah.
You're not gonna stop that.
Okay.
See what's going.
Yeah.
They're all, they
They have
have
the-
misunderstood.
Yeah, they do.
Right, what do you need from us? Everything?
No, I think this is really good discussion. I can make some edits, you know, some homework to do, rubbish removal, like fixtures, all this stuff. So,
And then before we look at it again, will you float it to town council?
um,
That makes sense.
I I was thinking we could kind of come to a consensus and then send it to town council and then.
Yeah, cause we'll wait until the state is the.
Yeah, I want to be proactive.
The final version.
Yeah, like, nobody knows when these regulations are going to be.
Yeah.
Posted, the new ones, it's very, very frustrating, because here we are, this thing is getting enacted next month, the second of next month. We have no idea when these new regulations are gonna come out, and here we are trying to be proactive for town meeting after the inaction. So.
That's the plan. They don't want you to be proactive, because then you'll.
Yeah.
So
We
maybe
just
you
got
can
a charter
send out
for
the,
14 months later.
Yep.
send out the, if you get state guidance, you can send that out.
Yeah, as soon as I get the new state guides, I'll send that out, and I will also make sure that when I re-draft these, I was told under the state deadline with the holidays. Knew I'd be able to draft it, just didn't know how soon, so I'll make sure that you have ample notice to review the info.
Yeah.
The same thing with the meeting minutes, those, we just had those finalized this morning, so if you wanna hold off on voting on them and if everybody wants to vote on the next meeting. Well, I didn't see an issue.
Anybody have any changes or comments about the minutes? No, I have one change, I wasn't here. So, this is members present.
Sure.
Yeah. It's nothing actually available because we are.
You've been struck.
Good. If we learned anything through the master plan committee, minutes have to be approved.
I broke out in hives before I came in here, by the way.
Any other revisions or changes? All right, entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
Second, any discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstention. I wasn't here,
Yeah,
so I'm abstaining. Even though I don't technically have to abstain, I can approve it.
Yeah, if you think I should,
For the record.
I wasn't here.
Yeah, for the record, I just gonna abstain, just 'cause I wasn't here.
You read it.
But I don't know.
Fair enough. All right, you have 2 states rest on.
We need to pick a next date.
Yeah, I think it would be beneficial to do that. What what's everybody looking like? So it's the 14th. And then,
So the week of the 17th is, February break.
all right, which I was gonna say, that's probably the only week that I would recommend in February to do if people are available, because that is between the Concom and planning
The 18th.
weeks, the 18th.
I will probably be here. But you can soldier on without me. The majority
Okay,
will be here.
18th is good for me.
Okay.
It's good for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. February 18th.
18th, February. We don't want to put another one in between.
It's already February. 18th. We've been doing once a month. I mean, January.
January,
14th.
What's the schedule for the town meetings coming? Did you say for like?
That's in May, I believe.
We're still May.
Yeah.
Let me see.
6:30 on the 18th.
Yeah, I don't know if we need it or not.
You wouldn't mind giving me some time for the February 18th meeting to prepare some stuff.
I'd appreciate. There's a lot going on right now.
Yeah.
Ruff's a bit overwhelmed.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on.
Who knows what the state's gonna do too?
Yeah.
I mean, that supposedly it was, when did they come out with, more than the second?
Second is when it's an act.
Yeah. So I don't know, how do they stop that technically with, alterations to?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, those were draft regulations. They weren't even adopted, so. I think this is yet another situation like the MBTA with Milton, where, the Attorney General, they have the power to enforce the regulations. There are no regulations to enforce.
Who's in charge of making those regulations? It's not the legislature.
No, I believe it's the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, GOHLC. They're the ones who drafted like the draft regulations.
So how would you foresee them actually analyzing? Speculation, of course.
They're probably pretty busy right now too,
Well, the
so.
MBTA, they are. I think that's why it took so long for them to draft these. So,
Okay.
yeah,
So
yeah,
TBD.
exactly.
As long as we're prepared, that's all we can do and
Yeah,
see how it plays out.
yeah, just trying to be proactive as best we can.
See what they need to.
And this conversation is extremely beneficial to Tim and I as well, because, it puts things on our radar too, where if people come into the office, I mean, I've had a few people come into my office, I know you've had a lot more in yours, saying, hey, I built this. It's like, well,
The chumping it.
they are, and, this stuff is helpful. So.
Is it also be helpful to have, you can probably already do it, but staff meeting about this topic where like DPW, Board of Health, all those other groups get together and brainstorm all the ways that you can, things we should think about in situations where we have you and him.
I think some of the important things for general, I know it comes, the location of these things, we have to see.
Yeah, and we have brought this up during regular departmental meetings, so I know.
That's DPW, whether or not the sewer connection part, so what happens with the water? You're gonna make them put another curb stop in, or a separate water service, or you're making it go through the house, it's just so many things.
There's a lot of technical things to think through, so.
It's really a problem. The detached, yes, detached, it's a very, very complex.
And so maybe that, if you can.
Do we require separate service for detached?
Well, so for rental units, it's supposed to have 2 meters. You're not supposed to run with 1 meter, so
Yeah.
that eliminates the people now running a big wire underground to the house, because the rental unit is supposed to have its own meter. And there's a bunch of them in town that don't have it, and they fight, and then they charge us.
If they say it's not it's not a rental property. Hey, my mother-in-law, I'm building her, a 900, square foot little type in-law. She wants her own place. She wants a garage underneath. We're gonna put a chair that brings her, something like that, where she's not renting. It's just
Detached or attached?
detached.
Detached, yeah.
It's my mother-in-law. I need to take care of her. I don't want her in my home 24 hours a day, but I'm certainly willing to put her in a garage, above a garage or something. Believe me, I might want.
That's the bar. Amazon, it's in the bar.
There's that crazy, there's a big money over there. You were born 2,000 years ago.
Demonstrate that you can put a power supply,
Yeah.
a driveway, access, sewer or septic,
Yeah.
then run the site plan review. It's not limiting it, but it's putting it in with the zoning aspect. I don't know if the AG should have done that, but those are gonna be challenges, that's.
Do you really think they actually sat through and thought?
This is a figure it out.
Yeah, I guess.
Throw together, really.
These things you just mentioned in this document.
Well, that's what,
Yeah, that's.
I think, by the time we put this together, I think we really have to talk to Jesse about water service, fire department about what we already mentioned,
Mhm.
and electrical. I mean, what are we gonna do? String another line through the property, or do we still have to be underground? Maybe the GAG would let us do that.
That's a safety
issue.
That's a safety issue.
Why? The regulations state that you just can't impose more regulations on this than a single family, so in my opinion. It's a simple regulation change if we don't already have it with DPW or through your department of. Separate utility services for an ADU, and unfortunately, the harsh reality is, your mom wants to move into this 900 square foot ADU, you gotta have a separate service.
Yeah.
It's just,
Simple as that.
yeah. it's as
And
simple
you
as that.
can't do a separate service overhead in a lot of situations, because there's code on that, it has to be so far from everything. To string it over a house or around a house, you're gonna have to be underground. If it has to be underground, right, and the poles are across the street, now you need a pole set. To on your side, so it gets, but hey, they have to demonstrate that they can do it.
Yeah.
And if they can't do it, then we can't do a permit for it, but it has to be all
Those are
together.
great considerations.
And it should be controlled.
I think, I don't.
Do us for a utility
do it.
with a 25 grand.
No, so they'll give you a pole. The utilities will give you a pole, but no, it's,
They drop it
it
off.
takes forever.
Yeah.
There you go. It's anything down as you go getting polls, it takes months. Months.
Yeah, but things like that should.
So I think, you can do a site plan, you could do a site plan, but it has to be very, you saw the one that Milford did, I gave you that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, but it was just a review, it was just something to get them in there to show them what they're doing. Again, it didn't have much teeth in it because it says you can.
And what we would probably have to do is, we do have a site plan review process, which is a very, very watered down version of the development plan review process, and it's all internal. So it might just be that we update the site plan review to include single family houses.
Yeah.
Done.
I mean, we would do, Jim and I would do site plan review
Yeah.
on stuff that didn't trigger, and we didn't, we
Yeah.
have. And stuff that doesn't trigger it to go to the boards, it's right in here that says that, we have the ability to do it. There's been a few that we do, a lot of them, we want to bring it to the boards. So they can put whatever regulations, and then there's no surprises, but these small ones, it may be just a local, it may be just him and I doing the review.
Yeah.
But,
But it should be called out.
yeah, but so that's the thing, it has to be a very delicate thing, because the AG is gonna say, no, you're not doing that, So I don't know, I think the important thing is here, the most important thing is the detached thing. Okay, that's the most important thing I'm gonna play right now, and to see what they actually, how it unfolds, that's what the state says.
My attitude is we put in as much as we want and let the state carve it out and say, no, we don't like that, we don't like that, we don't like that. We may like this, so we just don't put it in there.
Hey, let's ask for all. And then, you know, yeah. What the problem with that is, we'll lose time because people will come in, they have to permit.
Okay.
We can't say no.
You're
So,
right.
well, it's kind of like a catch-22.
It is in a way.
Now, do you agree, Rob? That's how it is.
Jim, I am all for striking a balance here, cause like there's specific things that we just can't do.
Hmm.
But some of the gray area stuff, like the public safety, excluding trailers, the trash, all of these things, maybe updating that site plan review clause, like.
Utilities, maybe it's not just say utilities.
Mine is that if there's regulations in here that for fire safety, for example, and the AG thinks that it's not gonna, or it won't pass muster with the AG, guess what? We're putting our best foot forward here, you know. I would be willing to fight that fight, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If it's something like, for example, the names of the occupants for the ADU, like, I know the Attorney General would say absolutely not. In that case, that one might be a little bit difficult to fight and, you know, well, maybe it would be better to try and fight these other things, maybe, I don't know.
Well, names was just a question.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And what's the definition of a trailer with wheels, right?
Yeah, we were just looking at it.
Yeah.
Until
yeah.
it's,
Well, you know what, the building code does, go a step further on that, so a trailer, we could say no trailers, but a trailer would have to have the minimum room sizes too. Because the building code has, you know, bedroom has to be X, a bathroom, you know,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, modular homes, like the ones you see in Florida, they're not really trailers.
Yeah, right, so that
They-
that would probably meet the
Right.
regulation on area.
Yeah,
And I think what we want is to make sure that like there aren't.
and they have to be attached to something permanent, right? I mean, you can't just put
Yeah.
them on the gravel. What if a hurricane comes by and it's gonna lift the thing up and, I mean, when you build a garage, right, you gotta have it anchored to something that is, I think, you know, considered permanent.
Yeah, and I think what we really don't want is, you know, there's like the fancy actual trailers that is in somebody's driveway. Well, it's ADU.
No.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice, but that's not. That's not really.
Yeah.
It's not. 100 roosters, like shine, but you have teams.
Yeah.
All
right, so thank you, Rob. and Tim.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
I-
Aye.
right. Great, excellent. Good job, everyone.